audience. It is me, CM Cavi. How is the sound? Oh, wait, actually, give me 1 second. Where is it? Whoa, wait. Oh my gosh. Give me one. Okay. You know what? It's fine. Hi, everybody. It's me, Sam Cavi, and I'm going to turn on background music right now. Right now. Okay. I think we have background music now. Please tell me if there isn't. Hi, it's me, Sam Cavi. I'm here today to welcome back our very own MapleStory World software engineer, John, aka Ursus, for those of you in the MapleStory World's Discord server. John is here today for today's Creator Focus livestream to go over how to work with UI in MapleStory Worlds in the Maker. But before I hand it over to John, I've got a few announcements. This week we've got game hours where myself and a few other Nexies hop into a specific world to play games with you all. For August, we'll be hopping into Surviving Maple, and you can find Surviving Maple here. And we'll be there from 4:30 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. PDT today. But what is Surviving Maple? If you weren't here the last few times I live stream, it is a world where you drop into familiar MapleStory world or MapleStory maps and try to survive things like flash floods, zombies, lightning, earthquakes, meteor showers, and more. And lastly, our last announcement. Applications for Creators Workshop Class 3 are still open. Just drop !workshop into the chat, which I can do right now. And it should, okay, cool. Okay, cool. And for those of you who don't know what Creators Workshop is, it's our 12-week incubator program for emerging game designers and game development teams, brought to you by Nexon America and MapleStory Worlds. This is your chance to flex your game design skills, meet other awesome creators like yourself, and publish your game in MapleStory Worlds with direct support from Nexon. Plus, there's also a development fund, and applications close August 24th, so you only have a few days left to apply. Okay, so we're going to move on to the main part of our live stream. But before I officially hand it over to John, pinned in the chat is a link to our August 19 creator livestream survey. So for creators who watch today's livestream on how UI works in MapleStory Worlds, we'd love to know your thoughts. If you'll use what you learn in your current project or future projects, and if your understanding of today's topic has improved. We'd also like to know what other topics you'd want us to go touch on, like... Let me redo that sentence, that sounded... We'd also like to know what other topics you would want us to go over, like monster AI programming, saving and loading data, daily login rewards, game events, quests and achievements, and monster drops, and more. And now I'm going to hand it over to John in 3, 2, 1.
Awesome. Thank you so much, CM Cavi. So today we will finally be going over UI in MapleStory Worlds. So let's actually just hop right in and take a look at the end product of what we're going to try to target to finish today. So here we have a loaded template. So all of this UI that you see here is directly brought off from the template. And we're going to go into creating and what different template options we have in just a moment. But up in the top left corner, we have a menu button. And if we click that, we can see various different types of UIs that are available along with this pop-up menu. Today, we're going to try to implement 2 of these. We won't have time to implement all of them, but first we're going to implement the basic pop-up. We're going to show a certain title and an image, along with the description. And if you saw for a brief moment, there was a little bit of a pause where as the sprite was loading in, there was kind of like a loading wheel. We'll go into that as well. We'll also go into all of the various button hookups, how to add behavior to button clicks, things like that. The next thing we're going to implement is the quests panel. So this is a scrolling list that you can see here. And we have various button states that's available. So we can see that we have various different kinds of quests that, that are available to complete. And we can click on the claim button. And then we can see that the achievement has completed. We see like a little toast. We can complete other achievements. And as the game, or I guess as we complete these achievements, the button states will change. And we'll go into all of this stuff as well. So those are the things that we're going to go into today. But before we get into anything too specific, let's go back into the lobby. We'll save our changes. And we're going to go into create new and click create new again. And here we can see the various templates. So the one that we had utilized is the wood concept UI template. But we can see the simple black template, and we can also see diary concept, simple blue. So we have a couple, and each of these have slightly varying types of UI that are available and attached with these different templates. So take a look and explore all of these. Especially, there's no behavior attached to those, but there is all the UI setups, scrolling list, various buttons, common gameplay UI that you might see in various games. So take a look and see what kinds of templates that are available to use. So we're going to go into the wood concept template, and we are going to click create new. Yes, Fate. We will be going over sprites that take too long, so we're gonna go into kind of like a slight loading graphic for while we wait for our sprite assets to load in. So look forward to that. Okay, so this is the basic wood template. If we press play right away, we're gonna be asked to name this world. We're gonna name it my wood template world. And I got my play window down here. I'll expand it just a little bit so you can see a little better. But when you install the template, everything will kind of be in Korean. Please go through and change it to English. But we can see the pop-ups for when we implement it. It is in English, and we're going to go through it. We have the button hookups set up here. We also have a secondary pop-up of various kind of tabs. We have the quests that you saw earlier. Again, there's no actual functionality attached to this. There's actually another issue as we go through implementing some of these. And we'll go through those as we go into the quests. But we have our inventories and various tabs. We also have daily rewards. It's a lot of tools that are available to you to utilize, or I guess just UI setups. If you're interested in kind of a more well kind of planned out and well-designed UI, definitely use the templates as a resource and as a reference points as you design your UI, because they're really awesome resources for you to utilize. Okay, so as soon as we hop in, we see that we have a couple scripts in here. With any project, the UI pop-up and UI toast is going to be default with the project. But we have this component here where it shows a pop-up button. So in here, we have ton of events that are set up in here. The way that our buttons are hooked up is through what we call events. So we're going to handle our buttons a little bit differently. This is not the method that I would actually recommend, that you set up all your buttons, especially because we have so many various events, and having one method dedicated, or I guess this kind of layout isn't really readable as clearly. So we're going to go into a different implementation in just a moment. But let's see how the default way is implemented. And this is just examples just to get things working. And that's why these are kind of set up in this way. But first we have our button click event. And just a quick overview of events. Essentially what events are, let's say we have some sort of action that we want to happen. It doesn't necessarily have to be a button click, but it could be anything. Let's say a player has died. Let's say a player picked up an item. Whatever kind of interaction event that might that may happen within the world is essentially can be turned into an event. An event notifies various entities. It can be listened in on. So when an event is raised, let's say someone picks up an item, we can raise an event. And when an event is raised, we can have various other entities listen in on that event to perform behaviors unique to that component. So if for this player, we want to have this event handler behave in a certain way, we can have that entity. We can have a specific handler for that entity. If we want the item pickup events to be handled in a different way for UI, for example, and we want the UI to also update, we can have the same events listened in on, and we can kind of handle that event for various entities. So that's what just a brief overview of events. We do go over events in our tutorial series on promo. So if you want a little bit more of a deep dive into that, do go into our promo series and take a look into that for more information on events. But we have our button click event. When you click, when you create an event, or when you press plus button on the event handler, we can see a list of already built-in events. We can create our own, and we are going to in just a moment. But for now, let's click on the button click event. When you first create an event, we can see that it automatically renamed our event handler to event 9 based on the other methods. But initially, we have the listener as self. That means that when this event is raised somewhere else, the listener is going to be, we're going to listen in on the self as the event raiser, but that is not the entity that raised the event. So in order to actually listen in on the event itself, we're going to listen in on that specific entity. So up here, we have by entity, so we can click on entity, and we can click on the button that has the component that raises the event. That way we can listen in on the entity that raised this event, and then we can handle the behavior here. So the way that we've handled it here is we have the event entity as a parameter. And then we're going to load in, or we're going to find the panel here. So panel in this instance would be UI button group and menu panel, and that would be this entity here. So if we click copy entity path, we can see the path is the same as we saw here. So you can copy this path and paste that into the get entity path here, and we can grab the entity. And then we're going to set the panel .enable to false, and we're going to kind of toggle it. If it's already false, we're going to toggle it to true. If it's true, then we're going to toggle it to false. So we can kind of toggle the button states on and off. And all of these other ones are working essentially in the same way. We have a couple other ones where we have a button instance. So for example, in our other window here, basic pop-up and panel, OK button. So let's kind of open up this UI and we'll activate it just to see kind of what's happening inside of this UI. Window resize. So in here we have the outer panel, and then we have the title panel. This is going to be anchored to the top. So we have various anchor presets, and we're not going to go into this in too much detail because we do, again, go over UI anchors and UI positioning and things like that in our tutorial series. So again, I highly encourage you to take a look through our Pro Mode series for more information on UI. But our title panel is anchored to the top. This essentially means is whatever the parent panel is, we are going to kind of stick to the top. So the positioning is going to be relative to the top of the panel. And then this kind of stretchy blue just means that we are stretching to the width of our parent panel. So we have various offsets. We have from the left side, we have 25. From the right side, we have 25. And from the Y position, we're kind of bringing it down a little bit of 25 pixels. We have a total height of this title panel as 110. Inside of here, we have our title panel kind of positioned in the center, and we have a certain width and height for that. We have our paper, which is kind of stretched to the entire width of the entity and has a certain offset. It's kind of offset 164 pixels from the top. And inside of here, we have its contents. We have kind of a line, we have the icon, we have the message, and then we have the OK button. So the OK button is kind of anchored to the bottom, and it has a Y position of 145 from the bottom. So in our script that we saw earlier, we're going to grab this OK button again from the path, and we're going to connect this. We're going to utilize the connect event handler. So another way, instead of using this event handler, is we can we can connect an event to the entity so that we can set up an event in code, or I guess we can set up an event at runtime instead of at compile time by predetermining the method beforehand. So in this way, we can set up this connect button and we can connect the event. Any entity will have this connect event method, and we can connect any event that you want to any event. So essentially what this does is it turns this cancel button into an event listener. And it listens in on this button click event, and it passes in this cancel function. So this function just grabs this panel and then sets the enable to false. So that is basically our pop-up button, and then those are events and activating and deactivating our various panels. So let's go into our own implementation. So let's actually delete this pop-up button script here. And we are going to create a couple scripts. We're going to right click and we're going to create a component, and we're going to name this pop-up view. And we're going to attach that to our basic pop-up view. And we're also going to create a UI manager. So we're this one's going to be a logic script. We're going to name this UI manager. Our UI manager is going to be kind of a global kind of event, or I guess global kind of bridge between our components and the UI. So we can essentially call UI manager for our various pop-up windows or various windows. We can call UI manager to open and close and update UIs, things like that, instead of having a reference to each of the UI. So this is just one way to handle kind of UI updates event and UI communication. Okay, so within our pop-up view, actually, just before we get started, let's change this to our local workspace, just so that we can work with VS Code. I'm gonna click yes, and we are going to create a new folder here. UI webinar. I'm gonna open that up and select the folder. If you didn't see what was happening behind the scenes there, actually I think you did. I essentially I saved the path where I created a new folder on my local desktop, and I decided where I wanted to save it. We're also going to use extended script. So we're going to enable this. I'm going to save our changes. And the cool thing now is that when we double click on pop-up view, it now opens up a VS Code project instance. And in here, automatically loaded is our scripts. So we have our UI manager, we have a UI pop-up, UI toast, pop-up view. One thing that you do have to make sure that you do is in your settings and maker, in local workspace, make sure to have VS Code integration checked. And then it will, when you double click on a script, it will instead open up VS Code, which I prefer as kind of a easier way to script. So we're going to create a couple of variables in here. We're going to create our text component. We're going to create the image, description, and OK button. Also going to, these are all the references for our button, for our pop-up window. And we are also going to create an on-click property. And we're going to hide that from the inspector because it's just going to be a more dynamic way to show this pop-up window. Instead of tying behavior at compile time, we can dynamically tie behavior to this pop-up window so that every time it's opened, it has a different behavior depending on what opened this pop-up window. So we can have a certain callback for when this pop-up window is closed. Okay, so to implement, we're going to create, I wrote all of this code beforehand, and we're going to create this method show. We have several parameters. We're going to have a title that we're going to pass in and assign the text component .text to the title that we pass in. We're going to pass in the image RUID that we want to display in that icon that we saw in the pop-up window. Let's go back right there. So we're going to show that there. We're going to have string for the description, and then we're going to have our on-click callback so that when we call this function, we can have a certain callback for what happens when we call this function. So when it's closed, we can have a certain behavior that occurs. Okay, so we have the entity. We're going to attach it. We've attached this pop-up view to the self. So the self would be the entity pop-up, basic pop-up. And then we're going to set the OK button down here. We're going to set that OK button and we're going to connect the event that in the same method that we saw earlier. We're going to pass in the button click event as the event type. And then we're going to pass in our on-click method here. And we have assigned this on-click to the on-click that we pass in through this function. And then in the sprite utils, so this fate is going to be the portion that you might be interested in, but we have our sprite utils.load asset. So this is going to be the function that we're using to first display a loading kind of graphic. And then when it's finished loading in, we are going to load in the final asset. So, and we're going to pass in our image RUID, and we're going to pass in our set sprite function, which is going to be just setting the image to the final image that we're going to pass in through here. So let's actually go back and let's create that sprite util. So we're going to create another folder. We're going to name this common. Right click, let's create another folder, name this utils. And then let's create a logic script. I'm going to name this sprite utils. And if we save this, it will make sure to update our VS Code instance with the folders that we saw. So make sure to save in the maker to update your VS Code and the folders. So in here, we can see that we have the sprite utils. In the sprite utils, we're just going to add in the load asset. And we're going to have a property up here, sprites by RUID. And this is just going to keep track of the sprites that we already loaded in. We're going to make sure that if we've already loaded in the sprite, that we don't load it in again. We also are going to have another property for the loading sprite animation. And in our, so this is going to be the loading sprite that we're using for our case here. We're going to paste this in our animation. MapleStory resources. We paste that in here. It is just this kind of cog that we use as the loading graphic. And this is just found from randomly by searching in gear in the animation clip. And we're going to use that as our loading animation. Of course, you can import your own if you'd like, so you can have a different kind of more custom spinning circle if you'd like. For our case, we're just going to use this loading sprite. And in our loading asset method, we're going to first grab the state of our sprite. So if it's already been loaded in, it's going to have the value true. If it hasn't been loaded in, it's going to have the value nil because we haven't initialized the value for this yet. So if it's nil, if is loaded is nil, that means that we now need to load the sprite in before we call the sprite. So we have our callback set sprite. So if we go back into our pop-up view, we are passing in, in our load asset, we're passing in our set sprite function. So this is the function to assign the image to whatever kind of component that we want to assign the image RUID to. So we have this set sprite function that we're calling here. And first, we're going to set the sprite to the loading animation. We're initially going to set the sprite to the loading animation. And on begin play, just to make sure that we already have that loaded in, begin play, we are going to load in our sprite animation. We're going to make sure to load in our animation clip because we know it's an animation clip. We don't need to do a type check. But down here, we are going to do a type check where the RUID may be a sprite or it may be an animation. So we're going to grab the type by using resource service get type dot and wait. And any and wait function is going to halt the execution of your code. So be mindful of that. This is not asynchronous. This is kind of going to be waiting, and it's going to halt execution. So we're going to grab the type, and if it's an animation clip, we're going to use the load animation clip and wait. Otherwise, if it's a sprite, then we're going to use the load sprite and wait. So after we've loaded in the asset, if it's nil, then we fail to load in the asset, maybe because it's an invalid RUID. And then otherwise, if we've successfully loaded in the asset, then we're going to assign the value to true so that next time we call this load asset on this RUID, that it is true and we don't call this function again. Then at the end, we're going to call set sprite again, this time with the proper RUID that we passed in. So it's going to do all the loading over here. First it's going to set the loading sprite animation. Then we're going to do all the loading in here. And then at the bottom, we're going to do set sprite. This is for a single asset. There are also other ways that unfortunately we're not going to go into and we won't have time to go into, but there is another service inside of resource service dot preload. async. And this will take in a list of RUIDs. And instead of loading everything in one by one, which I don't recommend doing if you're loading, if you're preloading assets, let's say for a loading screen, and then you want to load in various assets, I would not recommend using this method. This is just for, let's say, a single asset that you just want to load in really quickly. Instead, you would want to use a similar system, but instead as a list and call the preload async method instead. And that will be able to load in a group of assets instead of just a single asset. Okay, so we have that set up, and then now we have our Sprite utils load asset. But we don't actually have anything that calls this function just yet. So we have all this set up. We're also going to, we don't have the self.onClick method yet. So this is going to be the method that we call for, here we click that button. So down here, we're going to have a hide function that we're going to call onClick. So when we connect the event, we're going to pass in this onClick method. That is going to make sure that we have a valid onClick. If it does, then it's going to call this callback. So this will be the callback that we assign on the show. And then it's going to remove that callback. So it's a one-time call. So every time a different function calls in, calls this pop-up view, we are going to pass in our onClick. And then at the end, we're going to hide, which just sets the enable state to false. Okay, so what's going to actually call this show method here? So the way that I will set this up is in our UI manager, we are going to have a reference to our pop-up in the property. So let's really remove this. And so another kind of cool shortcut is when you set the type and you set that assigned to a certain value, if it's a reference to a component or an entity, if you just start with quotations, it'll kind of autocomplete based on the entities that exist in the scene, and then it'll kind of filter by which components that match the type of your property. So in this case, we only have one entity in our scene, or one entity in our project that has this pop-up view component attached to it. So it's just kind of automatically grab that for us. So we have got our reference to our pop-up view. And then we're going to simply call our show pop-up in our UI manager. So here, show pop-up, and we're going to pass in the title, image RD, description, onClick, all of the stuff that we have in our pop-up view. But instead, we're going to use the UI manager as kind of a bridge between the pop-up view component to whoever is calling the pop-up. So that way we don't need to have a reference to the pop-up view for all components. We can just use the UI manager as kind of a bridge for that. Okay. So we should, at this point, just be able to utilize our Lua executor. So we're going to go into our Lua panels, Lua executor. Not that, let's say there. We're going to hide our pop-up. And we're going to call UI manager dot show pop-up. And don't want to write all of it out, so I have mine already kind of preset here. So we're going to pass in the title. We're going to name it my title. We're going to pass in our RUID as a certain RUID that I just found. It's a random kind of image. We have the description, and we have the function. We're just going to log hello world when we close this pop-up. So if we press play, sorry. But the reason that's happening is because we need to make sure that we assign the execution space of our Where's save? Oh, I just did not save the scene. Sorry. So if we click refresh, Control R to refresh, that will refresh our scripts, and hopefully this time it works. Any type cannot be used in show pop-up and cannot be used in other execution space. Oh, we're calling it from server. We want to call it from client. Sorry, we a little bit all over the place. But I forgot to assign our references into our pop-up panel. So all of this is nil, so that's why it's kind of complaining here. Let's go down here for the title. We want this title text here. So let's assign this. We're going to go down into our basic pop-up group. Where is it? Basic pop. Okay, sorry. And then for the image, we're going to do the same thing. Pop-up group, basic pop-up, and then we have the icon, the description. We have the message, and then finally the OK button. And then hopefully this time it will not complain. Make sure we're running that on client. And then yes, we have showing our pop-up properly here now. So now if we click OK, it should give us the callback. So we can call this again, and then we're going to get hello world. And depending on, so it's kind of more dynamic now, where we can say success. Call it this time, we have a different message being called. So this way it's a little bit more dynamic. We can have different kind of messages being shown depending on the how we call it. So next, let's actually hook up the button here. So for us, we're just going to just call it debug. And then we're going to create a script. We're going to create a component called UI dummy. Let's actually make it all caps so we know to delete it later. But this is just going to be just to test the buttons. We're going to go into our menu panel button group. I'm not sure why my UIs won't resize. But if you go into UI dummy tester, we're going to attach that to the menu panel here. And then we're going to open that up. Oh, we're going to save it first. And then we're going to open it up. And inside of here, we are going to call our test pop-up. We're going to create our test pop-up method, which is basically going to do the same thing that we did in the little executor. And then we are going to grab the we're going to create a property for our pop-up. And then we're going to grab the model ID. So this time we're going to pass in the model ID of our pop-up. And we're going to copy our pop-up model ID. Model ID there. I'm going to paste that right into this field here. It'll be the entity ID, sorry. Actually, we did not create a model. Let's actually just create a model. This is not necessary. But we're gonna copy that model ID. Put into there. And then we are going to, inside of our pop-up view, we're gonna create this method called setup UI. And then we're going to paste in this bit of code here, and then we're going to create another property for our default path. Our default path is just going to be our UI group and into our our default group here. And then within here, we are going to you know what, sorry. We don't actually need to do all of this. Let's just actually grab the entity reference on just for reference. All of this is just to make sure that we spawn in the model at runtime, so that the model, or I guess our UI, doesn't pre-exist into our scene. It is spawned in at runtime, so that let's say in a different scene, or we just want to, let's say we want to share this code with other people, and then we don't want them to have to kind of set up all the UI and then know where to place it and have all of that stuff. That's why this stuff is set up. This is not necessary for today's webinar, so let's actually get rid of all of this. And let's go a little bit more simple, where let's call method setup buttons. And here we're going to find the button entities by doing get child by name panel and then get child by name scroll list. And then we're going to grab our first button. So this is going to get the children of our entities, and then we're going to grab that first entity. So in here we have our scroll list here, and then we have the various buttons. We are going to grab that here, and then grab the children of all of this, everything inside of the scroll list. So we're going to grab the very first entity, and we're going to connect the event the same way, and then we're going to call test popup. So we're going to set that up on method on begin play. We're going to make sure that the execution space is client only. And I'm going to call self.setup button. Okay, so that should set up our panels, or set up our pop-up. Let's go back into our UI here, make sure that we have our UI desk menu panel, and then we're going to actually get child by name scroll list. Sorry about that. It's named a little bit differently from when I had done it. We're going to grab the scroll list and then get the children of that, because we have the UI dummy tester attached to our menu panel, and then we have the scroll list that contains all the children. So that should do it. Back, refresh, and then press play. And then now we have our button set up to our first kind of panel here. Okay, so that is the pop-up window. So again, just a quick overview. We are using our UI manager as the bridge for a show pop-up, so that when we call it from a certain entity, such as the UI dummy tester, and we call show pop-up, we don't have to have a reference to our pop-up. We can just do UI manager show pop-up, and then pass in the functions here. So the UI manager kind of acts as a bridge between our components, and then inside of here we are handling the pop-up button. So there's nothing specific to our project. We're not coding a bunch of different behaviors for the pop-up view depending on use case. We just have our on-click to be more dynamic, and then allow our codes to run in various type of use cases. Okay. Given the time, not sure if we have enough time to go into the scroll list. I apologize for going a little bit overboard here, but let's actually just go back into the scene that I've already set up for our scroll list, and I'll just kind of, instead of building it from scratch, I'll just go over kind of the layout of what's happening here. So in our so we have a very similar setup inside of our our achievement view here. So we have our achievement pop up here, and then inside of here, let's go into the UI. Let's activate this. We have our panel, we have our title panel, and then we have our contents. And in here, we have a scroll layout group component. So this is going to contain a list of all of the various entities that we're going to use for our quest. So we have down here in our achievement item, we have this, which is going to be our scroll bar. It's going to be our quest item, and we have the various button states. So this is going to be a cover for the dim is going to be a cover for after the achievement is completed or the quest is completed. We're going to dim that out, and we're also going to set the button to the proper state. So we have various image RUIDs here that we're going to use for our various button states. So for our active state, we're going to use this RUID. For our inactive, we're going to use this RUID. In the reward list, we're going to assume a maximum of 3 rewards per quest, but this of course can be expanded. And then finally, we have our scroll bar. So our progress bar has a slider. All right. So we have a slider component where it's a value from 0 to 1, and then depending on what the value is, it will kind of scroll our slider back and forth. But if we just have this the slider as is, it will actually allow the player to modify the what's happening? I'm going to the lobby, not save my changes. And if we hop back into our UI here, sorry, we're almost done. Okay, so we have our fill here, and then if we don't have this input block, it will allow the players to kind of to manually adjust it. So that's why we have this input block, so that we only adjust it through code. And then just really quick over the basic logic here. Essentially, the way that we are setting up our quest system is we have our achievement data, which contains the data for the achievement states. So depending on what the achievement state is, we have in progress, available, and complete. And depending on the state that we wanted to be in our achievement view, or sorry, in achievement item, we have a callback to set the state and then various buttons depending on that state. So we're going to set the dim cover to false or true, set the various text depending on what the value is, things like that. Fate, the achievement item to the scroll list, is it still bugged that you can't resize it? Can't resize the children of the scroll layout in vertical horizontal. Yes, that is still a bug, unfortunately. That has been a reported bug, so we are working to resolve that. But yeah, that is an issue that you may come across at the moment. So yeah, so it will still be an issue at the moment, yeah. And then we have the data. So we're setting up dummy data in this instance. So we're setting a bunch of dummy data for our achievement as well as our reward data. So we have achievement reward data and we have various dummy data and we have various rewards, different types of rewards. And for each achievement, we're assigning kind of random rewards for each dummy data. And then in our UI manager, we are, in our UI dummy tester, in our achievements, we're going to create a table of our achievements and then pass the achievements in. And then we're going to pass it into the UI achievements in the UI manager, and then the UI manager is going to show. And that's going to go through all of the achievement data and initialize them. And then inside of our achievement view, so we're initializing them and our achievement item, we are assigning the various progress, UI stuff, the rewards, the states we're going to set, and reward icons, things like that. Also the progress bar inside of the initialize function. Sorry I went through that part a little bit quickly. We did run out of time, but that is going to be both the pop-up and the Quest UI. So hopefully that was a strong enough overview of our UI systems. And with that, I will pass the mic back over to CM Cabby to close out.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, John. I am going to, it's pinned, the link to the August 19th creator livestream survey, but I'm going to post it again. Yeah, please fill it out. Let us know what you thought of today's creator focused livestream. The link is right there. Now some housekeeping. Our next live stream will be Tuesday, August 26th at 11 a.m. PDT. So next week, for that live stream, we're showcasing a few of the worlds from our Creators Workshop Class 2. And again, Creators Workshop Class 3 applications are still open until August 24th. And the very last thing, we've been hosting our Summer 2025 Fashion Story Contest in the MapleStory World's Discord. And the winners for our Summer 2025 Fashion Story Contest are Rennie and Lucidic. Congratulations, you two. I will reach out to you later today. And I think that's it for me in the MapleStory World's live stream. Thank you for joining me. Bye, friends.